Welcome to the Master Your Marriage podcast. I'm Charla Snow here with my husband, Robert. And today's episode is inspired by actually not one, but two client sessions that I had just this past week. Two different people that were in very different situations, but both were kind of struggling with a very similar problem, which was how they were getting motivated in their relationship. And that got me thinking as we were talking this week, there's probably a lot of you that are seeing a similar pattern in your own life. And what's wild is that we haven't talked about this before.
Yeah. When you mentioned it, I was like, how come we've not brought this up?
Exactly. We've done almost 120 episodes. We've never talked about this before.
Right.
So, Robert, you've probably noticed, I'm sure, how some couples only seem to fight for their marriage when they get pushed to the brink of divorce. Like everything in life has to be falling apart around them before they're motivated to change.
I think there's a lot of people in the relationships that we see who have a very similar take on it. They just charge in and only solve problems when the fire gets out of hand, right?
Exactly.
Instead of taking those small steps towards creating a vision of their life and their family they want. And so this is the difference between chasing after what you want versus just avoiding the fear or the pain that you have in your relationship. And that's what we're going to be unpacking today. And here's why. Your relationship really only thrives when you're driven by a vision of what you want, not when you're driven by the fear of what you don't want.
Exactly.
And if you're acting only to avoid the pain, then you're stuck in always reacting to problems and you're never going to really be able to create joy.
That's right. And as always, we're going to back all this up with science. We're going to explain what is going on in your brain when you are only motivated to get away from your problems. Plus, we have a really great story we're going to share with you today about a couple that had to learn this the hard way. And as always, we're going to give you some practical ways to shift your mindset around motivation.
Yeah, I love that. Plus, we're going to end today's episode with a short meditation to help you envision and or create a vision of the marriage that you actually want. So let's get started.
Let's start with a story about a couple that we are going to call Mark and Lisa.
I know Mark and Lisa.
Well, actually, Mark and Lisa aren't a real couple, so you don't know Mark and Lisa.
All right.
But their story is kind of a combination of several people that we've worked with and many familiar stories that I've witnessed in our couples work. So imagine this scenario. One day, Mark comes home and Lisa and the kids are not there.
Uh-oh.
There was no conversation about this, no expectation that she'd be gone. And not only are they gone, it kind of looks like they've packed their things to be gone for a while. Ooh. So Mark's looking around the house, trying to figure out what's going on. And then he finds a note.
The note.
And the note says, you know what? I've taken the kids to my mom's because I can't stay in a marriage where I feel so lonely. Show me that you're ready to prioritize our family. Well, that was the end of the note. And Mark's gut drops.
There's a kick in the gut.
Mm-hmm. He's terrified at this point, terrified of losing her, terrified of losing the kids. Suddenly, all of a sudden, he's ready to do whatever it takes. Coaching, therapy, you name it. He's willing to do whatever.
Yeah. But here's the problem. Mark wasn't always so motivated in his relationship. For years, he felt like their roommate syndrome was just normal. Mm-hmm. His life was much like all of our lives, a little bit on a hamster wheel, right? Go to work, come home, take care of the kids, do the yard, repeat over and over again. And he never really asked what he wanted his marriage to be. He just assumed that this is what marriage with children was supposed to look like. And man, do we know what this is?
We've been there.
This is not just Mark's story. I think this is everybody's story to some point. If you don't have a vision, for us, I don't think we had a vision. I remember being, we could have said Robert here because I remember just going through the motions.
Yep.
The kid, I come home, kids go to baseball, come back, we eat dinner, we go to bed, we start all over again.
Wash and repeat. And I definitely
rinse and repeat. Yep.
feel like there's a version of this story in every relationship. And we see it in coaching all the time. Now, let's go back to Mark, a little bit about his background. Mark grew up in a home where he was expected to never fail. Okay, so a little bit more background as you dig into his story. He was expected to get the best grades, go to the best colleges, do everything it took to make his parents proud. But it wasn't about chasing his dreams. His good grades were all about avoiding the shame that he would feel if he didn't accomplish those those things
Okay.
and not wanting to disappoint his parents. So he was always reacting from that place of fear or that place of shame, not really moving toward the things that he actually wanted, but just moving away from the shame he'd feel from his parents.
Away from motivators.
Yeah. So this story is actually quite common as well. Like I said, I had 2 clients just this past week, both of them men, who were struggling with shame, and a shame that was rooted back all the way back in their upbringing. And both of them, now adults, were similar to Mark, where they were reacting to crises rather than saying, this is what I choose. This is what I want. This is the life that I want to create.
Yeah. And I'm sure from the other side of the equation, their partners were pretty frustrated because you want your spouse to be all in.
Totally.
Right? You don't want a spouse who's just scrambling when everything just cycles and hits rock bottom.
Yep.
So maybe you're like Mark, only stepping up when you're afraid of losing everything. Or maybe you're like Lisa, desperate for your partner to show up with intention. Either way, there is a way forward. And it starts with understanding what drives you.
What drives you? What motivates you?
Right. So what's really going on here is it's all about 2 types of motivation. We have a toward motivation and away from motivation. People are either motivated by moving away from pain.
Yep.
Right. It's
like
too
shame.
hot. Right. Or shame. Right.
Like shame. Yeah.
Right. Or they're motivated by a vision of something they want, or maybe a combination or a little bit of both.
Yes. And one thing I will say that I've heard people say, and even in client sessions, that they kind of like those away from motivators. They like their shame. They like their fear because they feel like it drives them to be better. We're going to talk about that today and whether that's actually efficient or not. So toward motivation is what it sounds like. You're motivated toward what it is that you want. For example, you have a vision of something. This could be, you guys, this applies to everything in life, not just your relationships. It can apply to your career. It can apply to your finances. It can apply, of course, to all relationships, and of course, very much to your marriage. So having a vision of your relationship, what is that going to look like? Do I have a vision of what my marriage is going to look like? Yeah. Do I have a vision maybe of lots of passion, of deep connection? Do I have a vision of maybe laughing together every day? Or do I have a vision of what it even would look like to work through a problem, a struggle, but to do it together where we feel like we're a team? So a vision feels energizing. It feels like I'm being pulled toward this thing that I want, like being pulled toward a strong magnet. But away from motivation is when you're just driven by what you don't want. Oh, I'm just acting to avoid divorce, to avoid conflict, to avoid loneliness. It's where all those, I need to do this, or I should do this to escape my pain, those need tos and shoulds, that's what they're rooted in. And even as I say those words, I should do that. I need to do that. Can you feel how heavy and how draining and how exhausting those things are?
Yeah. And I don't want to say that it's all wrong when we start that way, because again, like this is bringing up a lot of stuff from when we were first married for me. Like I just thought I got married and I married my best friend and I'm happy and that's it. Yeah. And I think that's where we all start. I think Charlotte and I were talking about it when we were prepping this episode this week. I'm like, I don't think I had a vision for our marriage for a really long time. Yeah. My vision was just don't screw things up. Mm-hmm. Like, and we've shared the story before. My mom was married 4 times. Charlotte's parents were divorced. And like, I didn't want that. So I just, every time it looked bad, like, oh, maybe I need to self-correct and come and I just thought that's what it was. And it wasn't until we both did some work and we both began to find a vision for what our marriage would look like. And even that's one of the things that we do at the beginning of each year. We do a retreat where we set our vision and intention for the marriage. And it's been a game changer.
Do you even hear the difference though, when you talked about way it used to be versus how it is now? Way it used to be, energy. I don't want to be, the energy was totally different. Yeah. I don't want what my parents had. I don't want these things. Those were all the things you were trying to get away from. You were trying to get away from those pain points, versus the second half of what you just said was all about these things that we want and how we meet every year to create it. And that's why our annual thing that we do has been so valuable to us, because it's helped us to be so forward thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole away from motivation is sort of like driving a go-kart on one of those indoor tracks, like clunk, clunk, clunk. You just keep hitting the boundary. You're getting corrected and it's jerking you. Oh, I guess I go back to the center, jerk back to the center.
Right.
And
exactly.
That's what visual. It is. Yeah, that for me, I'm visual, right? So here's where the science comes in. Our amygdala, right, which is our brain's threat detector, sort of jumpstarts your away from motivation. Of course, this makes sense because the amygdala is our inner alarm system, right?
Yes.
Just like the rails on the go-kart, screaming at you like danger. You need to act. You need to steer towards the center.
Yes.
And this is what Mark felt when Lisa took the kids to our mother's. He was like clunk, like, holy crap, what just happened? Of course, an away from motivator is very powerful, but it's not really sustainable. We'll think about the go-karts again, right? If I keep banging on the side, somebody that's going down the middle is going to be much faster, much more efficient than I am if I just keep going from side to side.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of people who would argue that I love my pain. I love my shame. I love my fear. And it makes you successful because you're afraid of doing that only to a point. It's just not sustainable. It's sustainable in a short time, but you're going to burn out. You're going to run out of energy because it's just exhausting to just continue to be course corrected versus the person who's just sliding down the middle because they have a vision. They know exactly where they want to go. They know how they're going to take that corner, and they're not going to create any rub, let's say.
Perfect. Running from fear or shame in your marriage doesn't just burn you out. There's another aspect to this, and it's self-sabotage. That's really fascinating. Not only, like Robert described, is it inefficient and it's going to be exhausting, but there's a subconscious sabotage that can be happening as well. And I think this is one of the most eye-opening aspects of away from motivation. And it's something that I see in couples. I saw it a couple times this last week. So think about, you've heard those stories of lottery winners who go broke in a couple of years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's something that seems crazy, but many of those people are unconsciously undoing their success because they're stuck in this away from mode. So let me kind of explain how this works. What happens, let's say hypothetically, like our couple Mark, right, who's scrambling to fix things with Lisa. What happens when he gets far enough away from the pain?
No longer feels the pain.
Right.
And he can relax.
Now I can relax. No, everything's just fine the way it is.
Your marriage slides back and forth. Now, Charla alluded to people who win the lottery, but it happens. You've probably seen people who are wildly financially successful as well. Like they'll kill it. They'll hit one great product or a launch or whatever they'll sell. They have all the money and then they lose all their money again. And they use that as a motivation to like, oh, I got to get hungry and I got to build again. And they'll cycle the same way.
And this is where the sabotage comes in because they know on the subconscious level that they feel motivated when they have a problem, when they have a crisis, when they have this horrible thing happen. And so sometimes we actually create these problems so that we can get the motivation to dig ourselves back out. So it looks like this bell curve over and over and over along our line graph.
Yeah. And as a business aspect, that's okay. But in your relationship, it's not sustainable. Well, relationships don't want to tolerate that up and down very much.
Well, and I would argue it would be better even in your business if you didn't have the up and down, because then you could stay on this upward trajectory towards the goals that you actually want.
Yeah. Well, Mark had this problem, right? Where he would constantly go down, and we can't say it's Mark's fault because it's just the way he was wired.
It was just the way he was wired.
He was wired to run away from that shame. He's wired to run away from the difficulty. So he was wired in this away from, and he never really developed the skills or the habits or the vision in his relationship to wire within himself a toward motivation for his relationship.
Yeah. So I'll throw in a different word for a moment because maybe this will make a little bit more sense. There's the intrinsic motivation and then there's extrinsic motivation. So when we can be motivated internally towards what we want, that we don't have to rely on external things in order to give us that motivation to get what it is that we want. Yeah. So let's talk about, you talked about the amygdala. And you talked about how the amygdala is really the cause of our away from motivation because we're responding to the fear center or the pain center.
It's our fight or flight center.
So let's talk about toward motivation. Toward motivation is tied to our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that plans and dreams and sets goals. And when you focus on what you want, it lights up that brain reward center. And this is how you can feel motivation without having to create these rock bottom experiences in life to get and feel that motivation. And there's some solid research on that as well.
Yeah. So Edward Decky and Roy Ryan's self-determination theory, that's what they call it, right? So if you Google that, self-determination theory shows that when you pursue goals that align with your values and your desires, you feel more autonomous. You feel more connected. But if you're just avoiding threats, then you're stuck in this away from mode, which is much harder to sustain. So I love that. Like, I love being able to, light up those centers that really align with my values and my goals. But you need values and goals and vision to start with.
Totally. There's one other study that comes to mind by Roy Baumeister, who found that, of course, and this is not a surprise to anyone, that a bad motivator is stronger than a good motivator. So,
which is why people use them
in marketing and so forth, right? But of course, we're going to be highly motivated by things that are painful, but that also means negative emotions like, of course, fear, shame, those things will grab our attention faster than the positive emotions. But that's why with many couples like Mark and Lisa, they get trapped in these reactive cycles and they're only addressing problems when those problems are screaming in their face saying, do something, do something, do something.
Yeah. Like Lisa leaving to go to her mom's house. Yeah.
So in marriage, this plays out really clearly. If you are away from focused, you are putting out fires nonstop, but you're not really building something that you want. You're not building, for example, intimacy, connection, closeness. You're not looking for ways to know each other deeply. You're not investing in learning proven skills for conflict or communication. So we can either be the kind of spouse who shows up under pressure and only under pressure, or we can be the kind of partner who has a vision. And that is really the choice.
So think about this when we talk about just being reactive in the way from motivators. The relationship would be those, and we've talked about it on the show before, those relationships that are just, it gets bad and it gets bad and it gets bad. And then somebody hatches the idea of a grand gesture. And we go away for a week and we use that week because, we're getting along. We've left the stress behind. So we get away for a week and we come back and things are great.
For a minute.
But we can't just keep taking a week off every 6 months because eventually that timeline is going to start to compress.
Yeah.
And you can't solve it with grand gestures.
Yeah. You need to have a vision.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we shift? How do we get more into this vision, right? How do we shift away from the running away?
Yeah.
To chasing a vision that we really want? Well, we're going to give you a few practical tips. First, we have to get really clear about what we want. Ask yourself, what do I want my marriage to feel like? So this is not a list of the things that I don't want, but what do I truly want my marriage to feel like? What do I want it to look like? And maybe that's laughing together weekly or feeling like a team, or maybe your goal right now is just simply rebuilding trust. So a good start would be to start writing down all of these positive goals, the things that you want your marriage to feel like. And for me, I don't think I'd ever considered any of those things for a number of years in our relationship.
I have people tell me that all the time where they're like, I give them this assignment and they say, oh my gosh, I have never in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, I have never thought about what it is I want. I just think about it in terms of, I don't want fighting. I don't want conflict. I don't want, and they have this long list of all the things they don't want. But most of them are saying, I have never really thought about the things that I do want. So start creating this positive vision, positive meaning toward what it is that you want. And then look at that list and maybe just pick one thing to start out with. Like Robert just said, I liked feeling like a team. Maybe that's the one thing on your list that you want to get more intentional about. And then think about one thing, one action, one intentional action that would help you to move toward that goal. Maybe it's, I'm going to leave a kind note for Robert once a week, or I'm going to plan with him that we're going to have a check-in talk or a stress reducing conversation every day after work. We're doing that when we finish this episode, by the way. Yep. Or maybe your goal is, I'm just going to start working on listening without interrupting or listening without fixing. And I'm just going to practice exercising empathy. I'm going to practice working on my
this week.
Empathy. You were.
Been trying to listen without interrupting this week.
You were really good this week. We'll talk more about that in another episode. But
all right. And next, maybe you can work on how to reframe your crises. Like when it hits the fan, right? Like maybe you had a big fight. Don't just think like, I have to fix this or she's going to leave me.
Right.
Right. Think instead, I want you to change that, switch that up, change your internal dialogue and try seeing this as a moment to create something better. Ask like, what can I learn from this? How can this help us to get to know each other on a deeper level? How could we approach this as a team? So it's a mindset shift from acting out of fear towards moving towards opportunity. Every disagreement is an opportunity to learn something about the other person, learn a better way to connect.
Learn to understand each other better, love each other more deeply instead of, oh my gosh, I got to fix this or else, which has such a different energy to it.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So to help you feel this shift, we're going to end today's episode with a short exercise. It's a 5-minute meditation so that you can start envisioning the marriage that you want. So whether you've never thought about this before or whether you just want to get better at envisioning the relationship that you want, I think this is going to be really practical and useful. So do you want to kind of set us up with what we're doing?
Yeah. So this is called future pacing, and it's a way to imagine your ideal future and create an image that is so vivid that it pulls you towards it.
Like that magnet.
Yeah, like that magnet. So Charlotte's going to guide us through it. All you need is a quiet space and an open mind.
Thank you. All right, let's do this.
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay.
Find a comfortable seat and
got one.
Feet flat on the floor. If you're driving, perhaps you'll want to pause this here, come back to it later. Otherwise, close your eyes if you're comfortable and take a few deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth, a little slower and a little deeper than usual. And just let your body relax. Good. Now imagine a moment when you felt calm, connected, or happy. Maybe with your partner. Maybe it was with your kids. Maybe it was a time when you were just by yourself. Just think of a time, anytime, a specific time though, when you were happy. Picture it clearly. What you saw, what you heard, what you felt. And as you feel that surge of positive emotion that comes with that memory, press your thumb and your finger together to anchor that feeling. So you have the memory come to mind, drop down into your body, see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, and anchor that as you press your fingers together. Now, I want you to picture your marriage or relationship 1 year from now, exactly as you want it. So I want you to picture a time in the future when you are with your beloved and you're doing something together that you love. You're feeling joyful, connected, close. You feel like you're sharing a deep friendship. Okay, now where are you in this picture? Maybe you're at home and you're just sharing a meal together, or maybe you're going for a walk together. Where are you in this future place? What do you see? What do you see in this picture? Maybe it's their smile. Maybe it's the care in their eyes, or seeing, wow, they really love me. What do you hear? Do you hear laughter, a kind word, or just the quiet of enjoying being together and being present with each other? Now, what do you feel? Do you feel love? Do you feel peace? Do you feel excitement about your future? Now, I want you to see yourself in this moment a year from now, and I want you to make this image as realistic as possible, as compelling as possible. And I'm going to ask you to adjust the picture in your mind just to make it even more realistic. Make it really vivid in your mind, almost like a movie that's coming to life. Sharpen the colors, the sounds, the feelings to make it as real as possible, this picture of you in the future. And as you feel this connection, again, press your thumb and index finger together again to anchor it. This is a future memory that you've now created that you can revisit anytime. So now let's bring this vision back to today. Come back to the now, come back to today, and know that every step that you take now moves you closer to this vision that you've created. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Good. All right. So now that you have this vision in mind, let's think about maybe one action that you can take this week to start to move in that direction. Do you need to forgive someone? Do you need to work on listening better? Do you need to learn to speak and work on speaking with compassion? What do you want to commit to doing just this week alone to take you closer to that vision?
Ooh, that was awesome.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. How do you guys feel right now? This vision of your marriage is yours to create. Your marriage isn't about avoiding the pain. It's about creating a vision. So take this picture that you've created with you and run with it. And if you feel like it, we'd love to hear from you. Please share that with us.
Well, that is going to be a wrap for this episode. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Instagram at Master Your Marriage. And always, it really helps us out, you guys. If you did find it helpful, please do leave us a 5-star review with a comment and share it with someone that you think might need it. That helps us more than you know. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any ways that we can improve the show or suggest topics that you'd like us to cover, you can email us at masteryourmarriage@gmail.com.
So this week, be kind to each other. Put each other first. Remember, it's the small things done often that make the greatest impact.
Until next time.